a Freethought activity.
How to start.
Ask yourself some questions.
What is the most important thing for you to share with the children?
What do you wish you knew as a child?
What inspires you about the camp theme, science, skepticism, or humanism?
That is the core of your activity.
You want to focus on this core idea. Don't get distracted by shiny tangents.
This is your objective. Write it down.
This is what you want kids to leave your activity knowing and understanding.
Design it so that everything focuses on teaching them that idea. Now, make it physical.
Ask yourself, how can this idea be illustrated,
Simulated,
acted,
made into a game,
told as a story,
or run as an experiment.
turn these things into blocks of time inside of your activity.
To help you, we've created a few simple rules.
Number one, all kids must be engaged in your activity all the time. Think about the structure to make that happen.
Can you give me an example of this, Chris?
Yes, so I'm using this frog as an illustration of a child, but I once had the unfortunate opportunity to see an activity that was very poorly run. It was an experiment. It was actually really cool. They were testing some pseudoscience. Every child got to do the activity one at a time up by the instructor. How could they have run that activity better?
You could have the kids doing the activity in groups of 4 where every kid has a role, so they're all engaged all the time, and they could rotate through the roles.
Yeah, that's good. I like it. What about number two?
Number 2, you want to keep the exposition under 10 minutes.
What's exposition, Liz?
Exposition is times when you're talking, giving the kids vital information, but it may not be so active.
Yes. If you go to American Camp Association trainings, they remind us that kids today are spending a lot of time texting and tweeting. They're used to messages that are short. If you keep your messages brief, they'll find it easier to hear what you're saying. Number 3, you're going to make 2 different variations of your Freethought activity. One for your 12 to 14s and one for your 8 to 10 and 11. Start with your 8 to 10-year-olds and always start with a song.
Why would you want to start with a song, Chris?
So your kids are coming from some other activity. They're kind of walking in. They need to settle down. Singing is a great way to get them settled down and focused on you. And the reason is because even if only half the kids are singing, the other kids hear everybody around them singing, suddenly they're singing. You want to use a song, just a warning, you want to use a song that can either be written, it has very few words, can be written on a whiteboard or a poster, or that you can teach without a poster, but you do not, under any circumstances, want to hand out words to a song, because everybody's going to be crinkling papers for the rest of the activity and there's going to be trash floating off. Don't do that. So you have 50 minutes for your Freethought activity.
So if this was an hour, this would be the 10-minute chunk you don't have.
Yes. So you want to think of your activity as kind of having a beginning, a middle, and an end.
Your beginning is going to be your hook. It's going to be whatever grabs your kids' attention and gets them focused on you and your core idea right away. Your middle is going to be where you let them chew on the core idea. They have a chance to process it, to engage with it, to work with it.
And at the end, you want to use whatever time you have to either run an activity that reinforces the idea or some kind of synthesis activity where the children have to take that information and somehow create something new and creative with it.
So here's an example of an activity laid out in this kind of format.
Yes. So this is an activity that I'm actually writing for this year. You can see that I basically am thinking about this activity in blocks of time. These are minutes. So I'm starting with a song, and then I'm going to do kind of an introduction, okay? And then I'm going to basically be playing a game here to reinforce this introduction. And I actually have another game that actually explores the humanist ideas, and they're running 3 rounds of 8 minutes. And then at the very end, I'm going to do some synthesis by having the children make a poster, their own humanist poster.
And this third chunk is actually really important because a poster activity is actually a very flexible piece of time. If, for instance, the things are running a little long and you need to shorten this, you can have the kids start a poster and do it in 2 minutes. If you have extra time at the end, this is something that they can take as far as they want, and it's a spongy, flexible piece of time at the end.
And I want to let everybody know that you're going to be writing, again, 2 variations. The older kids, the junior high 12 to 14, and the younger kids 8 to 11. Start with the 8-year-olds because it's a lot easier to adapt a more active activity and scale it up than it is to work in reverse.
We're going to come back at the end and explain how you would scale this up for the junior high age kids. So your Gold standard when starting your activity is to start with something that illustrates your core idea.
So for instance, in the past we've had activities that started with evolution simulations where you were predators or prey, or when we talked about how cool it was that human beings invented money, we started with a bartering game. We didn't explain anything, we just handed them their tokens of cows and honey and barley and sent them to play.
You could have the kids playing a game from game theory and then go back later and talk about what concepts from game theory that we all experienced.
As Liz reminds me, in the teaching world, this is known as activity before content, or ABC.
It gives everybody a shared experience that you can refer back to, but without having to do exposition.
And unfortunately, this isn't always possible. For instance, it's really hard to simulate humanism.
So, to help you out, we're giving you some tricks to help with exposition.
Less lecture-like and more fun.
So, for example, you could do a demonstration that actually uses one of the kids.
Why would I want to use a kid?
Kids care more about other kids than they do about you. So if you involve a kid in your demonstration, you're going to be more likely to get everyone in the audience watching and participating.
You could start with a skit. Either you and your co-instructor running the skit, or you can write it so that it's flexible and you can just put the lines on little cards and recruit audience members right on the fly to come volunteer to be part of it.
You could open with a question ball. Do you have an example of a question ball?
I sure do, although I'm going to use a spongy frog. It doesn't have to be a ball, but it should be something soft that won't hurt a child if it hits them. So who here has any ideas what humanism might be?
Oh. Humanism is the study of humans.
Thank you, Liz. Now, I don't know if you noticed this, but Liz was doing more than just answering a question. She was throwing and catching a frog. What could be more exciting than that?
You could also tell a story using props
and pictures. Now you'll notice the pictures do not have to be good, but you do need to have pictures and props, at least one for every minute of the story. Even if you're not going to be the person that's actually running the activity, you need to basically time yourself reading the story that you're laying out and make sure you don't exceed the 10 minutes and that you have enough props and pictures.
You could also use audience lines, where ahead of time you give a kid a card with a line on it and you say, "Here, Chris, I'm going to point to you," and you read that when I point to you, okay? Okay, so today we're talking about different cultures. Does anyone have any questions? Chris, you have a question.
What is myth?
That's a great question, Chris.
Great. And you can use audience response, anything that can get the kids involved. So for instance, you can just hold up a sign when you want them to say something, or applaud. You can also do things like telling them ahead of time, every time I use the word humanism, I want you to give me one solid clap. But be careful with that, because you'll need to basically structure your exposition such that that actually enhances and doesn't detract from it. So for your reinforcing games, if your activity doesn't lend itself to simulation or experiment or demo, and you can't think of anything else, please use one of our reinforcing games. These work all the time. You can use them for anything.
So for instance, you could turn your core idea into a puzzle and have the kids compete to put it together.
If you have younger kids, we highly encourage you not to just do a puzzle, but to combine it with a relay. Anything that can be made into a puzzle can be made into a relay. You just take the pieces of the puzzle and put them on one side of the room, and the kids have to relay them to the other side and put them together in the puzzle.
You could do a Q&A with props. So Yep, okay, so here's an example of that.
So here's a tree, and each leaf has a question on it. The question, you can't see it's written on the other side. Children would volunteer to come up and pick off a leaf and read the question. Again, just like the question ball, it's a small thing, but it's more exciting than just answering a question. You're actually taking a leaf off a tree. Now, in actual reality, unless you were talking about the tree of life, you probably want your prop to have some connection to your activity. For instance, if I was doing this with humanism, I might make the tree the little humanist logo guy.
You could also
take a cue from the Advent calendar idea, where there's windows that you open. We have a picture, and it's basically hidden by questions. Kids come up, they answer questions, and they reveal the exciting picture underneath. You can also, believe it or not, you can put questions in balloons. If you take a question and you, on a thin strip of paper, and you roll it up, you can fit it inside of a balloon, and then the children volunteer to come up and pop the balloon. Again, more exciting. You're not just answering a question, you're popping a balloon. There's some drama about it. It's very fun.
If your core idea lends itself well to a quote or a phrase, you could turn that into, use it for recitation tricks. So for instance, let's say your core idea is extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. you could have the whole group practice reciting those, but do it in kind of fun ways. So for instance, you could have them all say it as an old man.
Extraordinary claims.
Or as a baby.
Extraordinary claims.
Or as a pirate.
Extraordinary claims.
You could also have them pop up when you say key words. So for instance, they would all pop up when you hear a word that starts with E.
And you could then play it as a game. Once you'd kind of learned it, you could put them in a circle and have them go around. One person, extraordinary, claims, require, extraordinary, prove, faster and faster and faster. And if they stand up when they're not supposed to, or don't when they're supposed to, they can get out.
You want to be careful with games where kids are getting out that they go really quick, because the kids who get out will be entertained by the competition going on for about a minute, and then they're going to find something else to do, and it may not be what you want them to do.
And don't be afraid to, when you make your documentation, to remind the person running the activity they don't have to have one winner. If you sense that a game is kind of run its course, you can have 5 winners. Everybody pat themselves on the back. Now we're moving on to the next game.
We said we'd come back and show you how to make adjustments for an older age group from when you start with the younger age group version.
Yeah, so for instance, this is my 8 to 10-year-old idea, and this intro is going to be, I have a friend who's written a What Humanists Believe, and basically for the younger kids, we're going to do those recitation tricks that we talked about, doing it as a pirate and as an old man, so they'll at least seen it, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about what it means exactly, but giving them some introduction to, some exposure to it. And then I'm going to basically run a relay where they basically take phrases from that and they have to basically rearrange them in order. For the older kids, I'm going to flip these two. That is, I'm going to tell them that my friend wrote this What Humanists Believe, but I'm not going to show it to them. Instead, I'm going to tell them, hey, it's a puzzle, figure it out. And sometimes you luck into a game that is just naturally scales up. So this game here, we take different aspects of humanism, like separating myth from reality, and we ask them to name as many reasons why separating myth from reality is important, and we give them like 2 minutes to do it, so it's competition, right? But the younger kids are going to come up with different reasons why it's important to separate myth from reality. The older kids will have more sophisticated reasons. It naturally scales up because the ideas are coming from the kids.
And with the younger kids, you're going to have them each making their own poster, but with the older kids, you might have them all work together to create a mural. That way every kid's participating in this one combined project, and they kind of get to do their own thing on it too, kind of like graffiti.
Right. Another thing I could have done if I had more time for the older kids is part of humanism is making the world a better place, and we could figure out some way right then, maybe writing not secret admirer, but secret nice notes to other people at camp that could be distributed at the next mealtime.
And
something
start
they could do.
Applying the idea for it.
Yeah. So good luck writing your activity. We're totally looking forward to seeing what you come up with.
We appreciate all the hard work you're doing. If you have any questions or you want more ideas, you can always email or call Chris or me.